Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Jason, and this is Jason Root at the RootHealth Podcast, where we go over everything from healing to performance through human movement. And so this is where we cover all topics MediFit and human development. So let's jump into our first topic. And normally, for those of you who are kind of new to the podcast, I'll either just bring up something that I was talking about with a client. Most of my clients, we deal with in person, in the studio, on the table. We do MediFit counseling online as well. But yeah, most of the time these conversations are kind of just topical and conceptual while we're working with somebody, doing our manual work with them, with that that's stretch and stuff like that. And so these topics will come up. So one topic that came up, with a client of mine the other day, I told him, I said, well, we were talking about his gym workouts, and I was asking him what other stuff he did other than just training in the gym, or working out in the gym. Is there even a better term for what this particular client was doing? And I said, limiting your activity to training in the gym is like learning cursive and never writing a letter. And I said, what do you mean by that? I mean, he kind of laughed because he knew what I meant by that. But, we wanted to go a little bit deeper into the concept. And I said, well, the concept is that when you train, what you're training for has to be transferable. It has to be a transferable skill. If you're learning strength, that strength has to transfer to something. Now, of course, we have benefits of training to where your body is and your health is affected greatly, and so there's a transfer right away. But the problem is that in the mind doesn't really respond very well to something that doesn't have a transfer effect. So if you were a construction worker and you went and worked out after work, the next day or the next week or the next month, you'd see that your body is getting stronger and feels better, and you got less injuries and things of that nature. So the gym effect is much greater to your brain than if you were to just be, let's say, a computer programmer. Maybe you're a software engineer and you sit in a desk all day long. Well, and then you go to the gym and it's like, well, what's the gym really doing for me? So if you don't take what you're doing in the gym and make it transferable to what you're doing outside of the gym, then that can that is just not going to affect your feedback mechanism mentally as well as well as we'd like. Somewhat akin to if you're sitting there learning cursive and practicing in a notepad on your own, but never wrote anybody a letter. At some point you go, hey, why am I doing this? So that's what I meant by that, and he thought it was a pretty cool little topic, and he told me that it was something good to bring up on the podcast here. So, all right, so all right, so our second topic, this is another one we're talking with a client about, and not training your body is so this was a client who wasn't training at all. So everything we're doing with this person is to basically try to keep them mobile so that they're not in pain all the time. Excuse me. So it's to keep them mobile so they're not in pain all the time, so that they're not sitting in their desk and going, my back hurts, or that when they get up in the morning, they're everything doesn't hurt. So there's no transfer effects because they're not training at all. They're what we would call detrained when we talk about or untrained. Untrained means that you've never trained before. Detrained means that you are means that you've been trained before, you've been in shape before, you've trained for something, whether it is to be in shape or whether it is to be in shape for sport, something like that. And but at the current time, you're not training or developing yourself in any way really at all. And so I told her, I said, not training your body is like not getting your car fixed because you're too busy driving. And so, she kind of laughed and she said, and obviously, we kind of get that concept, but that's another one. Let's dive a little bit into. And so, if you're driving around and you hear your brakes, maybe you're stepping on the brakes and they're grinding. Well, eventually your brakes don't work and you can't drive the car anymore. Well, same thing is going on with your body. If you don't train your body in at least in the areas that it needs to be trained in to keep it in health and normal function and injury resilient, then eventually, your body's just going to break down the same way that your car would. And so, if you're not getting your car fixed because you're too busy driving it, eventually you won't be able to drive it because you never got it fixed. Same thing with your body. If you're too busy to work on it on a daily basis in some way, shape, or form, then eventually, it's going to break down and you're not going to be able to do anything with it. And you're going to have to do a whole bunch of restorative training, just like that old car you got sitting on the side of your house that is undrivable. So that's what we mean by that. All right. So here's a kind of a longer one. I have a client that was telling me, he was kind of telling me the scenario. And the scenario was his wife is really low energy, and she's high energy in certain things, but she's really low energy, and they have a kid, and his wife would be kind of would disconnect sometimes on the days that they have with each other and go kind of take a lot of time just kind of in the bedroom sitting there looking at the phone, stuff like that on her own. She wasn't really interacting a lot, although when he would do those sorts of things, she would get a little annoyed because she was having to do all the stuff with the kid and spend time there. And so he starts talking to me about it, and I said, well, there's a variety of different things that you'd want to cover in this situation. And number one is that, the reason why we all need to train and why we need to keep ourselves developed is to keep metabolically, we want to have high energy. And from a mechanical standpoint, we want to be able to move. So those are the two biggest things. We need to have some energy and we need to be able to move. In this way, we're able to be useful to ourselves and to everybody around us. So those, that's basically the crux of all training. We just need to be able to train to the point where we can, keep those two things going. So, what I told him, I said, well, I mean, from a physiological standpoint, what your wife needs to do is, number one, do something for her posture. Why? Well, because most of the people who have low energy have bad posture. Why does that matter? Well, because when you have bad posture, especially with the upper body, the rib cage ends up being tilted forward, and that compresses the diaphragm. Compressing the diaphragm has a feedback mechanism through your vagus nerve, and your vagus nerve is responsible for what we call interoception. Interoception is the way that your body feels. So interoception, well, let's go over that a little bit. Exteroception is our five senses. It's touch or feel. It's your eyesight. It's your hearing. It's your smell. And so you get that. Interoception is the feelings on inside of your body. So whether you feel like you have energy, whether your respiratory rate is high, whether your heart rate's high, whether you're hungry, whether hunger pangs, stuff like that. Baroreception, which is kind of how you sense pressure. Proprioception, which is where your body is in space. All those sorts of things. And so, if you're compressing the diaphragm, due to your posture, then immediately it's going to make you feel low energy. And then that affects everything else. Basically creates a cascade. So no matter what else you got going on, get to that posture. Number two, nutrition. So nutrition affects everything. So, it's another one of those things that affects everything. I tell everybody that they need to start off with nutrition, posture, and then the third thing we'll get to is just normal metabolic training. But so you need to get to your nutrition. Make sure you're eating the foods that don't drag you down. I found, carbohydrates, typically your, more, processed carbohydrates and stuff like that. They typically have that effect on me. It's not necessarily the same for everybody else out there. But I said, so from a physiological standpoint, start off with posture, then you get to nutrition and tackle that. And then you want to tackle, the, just getting active, being able to do walks every day. Your 10,000 steps, that sort of thing. 10,000 is a really good measure, give or take. I mean, it could, if you're at 2,000 right now, then 6,000 is great. You don't need to be necessarily at 10,000. It's just a really good number. For those of you who don't know how the number was come up with, yes, it was come up with. It was the company that came up with it in the first place was was a Japanese stepometer company, and but it's been proven to be correct. From a lot of study ever since that stepometer company came out with that number. So, just because was derived originally for the process for the purpose of marketing doesn't mean that it's not a good number. So that's a good rule of thumb. And physiologically, you want to try to hit somewhere in that ballpark. So those are the three physiological things: posture, posture and mechanics, your nutrition, and just moving. Getting your 10,000 steps or the equivalent in some sort of movement. Could be swimming, could be anything like that. But then you have to look at the second half of it, and that's where the psychological or behavioral part is. And that is going to be the part where this gentleman is having is going to have a little bit more of an issue, because we follow what's called the readiness to change model. So that's where a person with an addiction of any kind, and all of us have addictions. We have addictions to carbohydrates or sugar or caffeine or alcohol or sloth, and so just not moving. And this is being in a certain state. Addiction is just being in a certain state. So if you're not ready to change that state, then you're going to want to see what you can do with that person to plant the seeds without trying to force them into that that next level of their ability to get to the point where they're ready to change behavior patterns in order to employ the things that we talked about physiologically. So that's where I tell anybody who finds this to be to be analogous to maybe something they're experiencing with a family member, a friend, or something like that. That you never want to push them. You never want to tell them that they're bad or they're doing wrong or anything like that. Although you might maybe mention to them how it's affecting you, but other than that, that it's that you might want to go ahead and Google readiness to change, and I'll show you I think there's 4 stages or 5 stages, something like that, and they just might not be ready to get to that point to start employing action, or they might be ready to employ action. So, they just haven't gotten to the point of actually doing it yet. Yeah. So you can start, planting the seeds or, giving them, things to do or doing it with them. There's all sorts of things that, you're going to have to figure out for your own life on that. All right, and so let's see. The next one is, I hadn't written that one down. So the next one is due diligence. So we'll go ahead and the next one is due diligence. So what do we mean by due diligence? And this is cross-related to another topic that I talk about um, called controlled obsession. So due diligence is where you're doing everything practical without a significant opportunity cost to develop yourself physically, and that's of course in this domain. If you would be doing your due diligence for your finances, if you're, saving 10% of your paycheck and putting it into an index fund, that's your due diligence. That's the best practical thing maybe that a person might be doing. So that's due diligence in that area. Your due diligence for the physical area, maybe just hitting those three domains of physicality that I talked about in the last scenario. If you want to get to a certain state, if you really want to change your physical state, you're going to have to look a little bit further than due diligence. And you're going to have to look at, really, well, what's your goal? How are you going to get there? You're going to have a controlled obsession about getting there. And then when you get there, maintenance is going to start employing due diligence. Now, what do we mean by controlled obsession? Well, if you ever watch any of these super performers and stuff like that, these guys are obsessive. I mean, they get into it and they're putting their time in. But there's inherently what we call an opportunity cost of that. There's something else. There's some other domain that has to be given up. A lot of them, you hear this, get up at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. and do your workouts. Well, hey man, a good part of being able to be physically healthy is, getting your rest and recuperation. So if you're giving up your rest and recuperation in order to, be able to get into work that needs to be done, then, there's an opportunity cost and the balance gets, tilted for, for a lot of us other folks out there that might not have the same scenario as those super performers. So that's why always say controlled obsession, meaning that you're going to control the obsession enough to get to where you need to be, but with respect to what that opportunity cost is. And then again, that opportunity cost could be time with your kids. It could be your recuperative time. It could be discipline. It could be like if you're trying to put discipline in on your diet and your nutrition, but you're also trying to put discipline in on, how many workouts you can get done per week. Plus, you're trying to put discipline in on meditation and all that. One of those things might end up having to give. Everybody's got jobs, stuff like that. And so, you have to have a controlled obsession. But if you're, end up having an obsession where all you do is work out all day, in order to get to a certain state, then, and everything else falls apart, then, what are you working out for? So that's where due diligence and controlled obsession, kind of meet and connect. All right, folks. Well, those are our topics for this week. Thanks a lot, and I hope to, I hope to talk to you soon. If you need to get a hold of me, then go to rh2, the number 2 ps.com, and my contact information is there. You can call me, email me, whatever you need. Look forward to talking with you. Thanks.